So today we're going to be using the Meguiar's MT300 dual action orbital. This is going to allow us to really cut through the paint pretty quick. We got to be careful because you can definitely do a little bit of damage, but if you take your time and be patient, you can turn your car from that 5-foot car that John had talked about in the beginning down to a 3-foot car. So we're going to use the MT300. We're going to start with the Ultimate Polish, which is a pretty mild abrasive to see where we land, and then we're going to be using the foam cutting disc. So one of the things to think about when you're polishing is you never want to start with the most abrasive. You always start with the least abrasive, the least damaging, the least hardcore, and you work your way up. Because there's no point in putting a really heavy cutting compound on the entire car only to find that you really only needed it in a few spots, and then you have to do all the steps to bring it back. So what I do and what Meguiar's recommends is you start with the least aggressive, do the car, test it out, and then as needed you step up to escalating levels of compound.
So Tim, one thing with polishing, I've never polished my car because I'm always afraid. I'm afraid I'm going to burn through. Why are we starting here?
So it's a great question, John. I like to start at the back when I don't know a car, when I haven't worked on it before, I don't necessarily know the condition of the paint. I always start in a really inconspicuous spot to do a little test. Okay. See what's going to perform, and to understand what level of aggression I need to get at the car with.
Okay.
You know, as the professional guys, they all have paint gauges, and they can actually tell the thickness of the paint to very, very small amounts. That's beyond where I'm at right now. I'm still, I consider myself a obsessed amateur.
Right.
But there's some great reference video out there on YouTube, Meguiar's site and other sites that really can give you the expertise and the knowledge to get at this without feeling self-conscious, without worrying that you're going to do any damage. Because if you do a little bit of study and you use the right products, you're only going to improve the car, not hurt it.
Cool. Well, I'm not going to sweat it. Let's go for it.
All right. So I'm going to take my foam cutting disc, which is a little bit aggressive, but given where we're at, I know what we need to do. So I'm going to take my cutting disc here.
And I'm going to Velcro's on there, huh?
Just Velcro's right on the back of the MT300. This is just a great polisher.
That's easy.
Yep, you just literally snap it right on there. Now, one of the things that you need to do is when you're putting on the compound, I kind of just put little dabs in.
Are we priming it?
We are exactly priming it. That's right. So what I do is I start with a couple little dabs, and then I just kind of dot it in there. Just give it a little bit just to kind of mix it up in there. You can also hit it with a little bit of lubricant, but basically we just want to get a little bit of product in there.
Okay.
And then now we're going to kind of...
So we're not hitting the car with a dry disc.
Exactly, because then that's where you could start to do some damage.
And now that last bit of application there, is that what you're going to actually apply to the car?
That's what I'm going to apply to the car. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start kind of down here, and I'm going to just kind of tap a couple spots just to kind of get it on the car.
Okay.
Now, tells you right on here, but basically for the removal, we want to kind of start it at around between 38 and 4,800 RPMs. The nice thing about the MT300 is it starts off slow, so I can kind of prime it, move it around just by feathering the trigger. Because the last thing I want to do is throw a bunch of product everywhere. So right. I'm working it in the car, and I'm going to just do this one little area, and then we're going to take a look, we'll clean it off and see how we look and if we need to go any heavier.
Cool.
Another thing you'll notice is I didn't pull it off as soon as I let go of the trigger. I let the machine slow down a little bit. Again, that's just to keep the mess down. It's a little tip. Otherwise, if you pulled it off when it's at full speed, you're just going to sling product everywhere.
Okay, that makes sense. So you're not wasting it, not making a mess.
That's right. So now I'm just going to kind of wipe off what I did. Take a look. And I can already see I've really cut back on the swirl marks. There's a few spots where, you know, I probably need to hit it a little bit more, but you can really see the difference if you look here versus up here. The reduced swirls. And so this will be another example. We'll do this up and maybe we'll tape a before and after up here when we do this.
Okay.
One of the things I really like about the Meguiar's products is the beveled edge on the discs. They allow me to be a little bit more precise and controlled, so I don't have to tape. Now, it's totally fine to go ahead and tape off your car, and if you're worried about getting product, like in all the nooks and crannies, sometimes it's hard to get out. But if you take your time and don't use too much product, you actually can save quite a bit of time by just being deliberate. So, where you see the hard line is where I had the tape. So once I pulled the tape off, you can see this is the area that I polished, this little area right here, and this area hasn't. And even though the paint was was very clean, it was clayed, and it was smooth to the touch, just a simple polish, a really mild polish, has taken us from this hazy, distorted reflection over to this crystal clear reflection. Now, there's still some scratches and there's still some elements in there, and we can go in there with a little bit harder compound and remove those. But what we're going to do now is we'll do the whole car. We're going to do it to this level of polish, and John's going to take some time on the orbital as well. And then we'll take a step back and analyze and really understand where we need to go harder, how we go to the next step. Because we're always ever going to get more aggressive, but we don't want to be aggressive on the whole car. So that's why we're going to start low and work our way up only where needed.
Tim, I see you got your knee pads on, man. You're really going to town on this thing.
Yeah, you got to get down there and you got to just get where the grid is and get it off. Sometimes a pair of knee pads or chair, depends on the size of your car, but you want to be able to really get in the car and work around it.
Yeah.
And if you're not comfortable, you can't spend any time there.
Yeah, makes sense to me. All right, so, you know, this is my first time working with polish, and I'm sure a lot of you guys haven't worked with polish on your car. Maybe you waxed your car. I've done a lot of waxing, a lot of cleaning, but this polishing process is kind of the next step. And as Tim suggested, you know, if you're a little nervous, one of the things you can do to improve your confidence, tape out the areas, you know, these hard edges that might get hit. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to bust out with some blue tape, just your regular blue tape to get it any sort of home, you know, fix-it shop or paint shop. And I'm just going to tape out a bit. And this is just going to make it that much easier so that I'm not going to be packing product into the cracks. And it's going to make it a little bit easier for us to get it done right. And, you know, it's up to you. You know, maybe you're feeling confident and you don't really need to, but it's just kind of an extra step you can do to just make it easier. Just like when you're painting your house, you know, you can try to cut in that edge, or you can tape it out and make it easier for yourself. So that's what I'm going to do right now. And then we're going to get into hitting this whole car, hitting my sweet Porsche with the Meguiar's polish process. All right, I'm going to give it a shot. Take what Tim's taught me here and go with the polish on the door here. Tim, one thing I worry about is burning through, and you know, Porsche's got a lot of curves to it. How can I not make sure to not burn through on those edges that seem to be getting hit more often than anything else?
Sure, yeah, what I always do is when I come to the edge, like I was doing on this door panel here, I'll always feather it and start to bring it towards me. So I'm trying to keep a constant distance from the machine, and then I pull it away as I want to feather that out. So right here I started to pull that away, and then what I'd do is I would feather that here. But if you're all nervous, like where you have a little chip and stuff, all you gotta do is put a tiny piece of tape right there. And you can always go back by hand and polish anything you missed. But if you just kind of put that right there, that'll at least will protect that. Okay. So you don't have to worry about the orbital ripping that paint off. And then you can just go back in by hand with the same compound and just kind of rub it out and it'll smooth it out.
Cool.
So
all right,
what you're going to do is, prime it a little bit.
About a half a disc worth or so?
No, not even that much. Just kind of swirl it around. Perfect. Okay. Now tap it on the car, kind of here, here, here. Yep. Okay. There you go. Tap it down, tap it down. Okay. So get a good grip on it. Yep. Now what you're going to want to do is put it on that surface, turn it on, and then as it starts to heat up or starts to spin up faster, kind of release a couple times just until you get this kind of more evenly spread. Otherwise,
Feather the throttle.
Feather the throttle.
Just like
Absolutely.
you would in your Forza game, brothers. Feather the throttle.
There you go. So yeah, a little bit now. Now let go. Yeah, and let it again. There you go. Now you're good. Now you got all the product on there. So maybe push just a little bit harder and try to keep that disc flat. So that means moving the angle of the orbital. So you want to keep that plane on the surface of the car. Now you're doing swirls. You want to go straight lines.
I had to correct myself there.
There you go. Now, you've got all the product in. Now you want to slow down. So now you're going to want to put it back on there. Give it a little bit more force, but just really slowly, because this is the action that's actually cutting the swirls out. The swirls are in the gloss coat, and you're polishing that out by actually flattening out the edges of, or the plane of the gloss coat.
Okay.
Nice and flat on there. There you go. Nice and slow, a little slower. Now go down and overlap. Keep the throttle on. Now you can go full blast. A little slower. You're lifting a little on the edge. Keep it flat. Okay. Now come up here. Let's hit this. There you go. All the way across. Feather back onto where I did it. There you go. Moving that back and forth. All the way over. All right. Now leave it on the surface and now lift it off. Okay. Right. Now set it down with the pad facing up. Again, we don't want the pad to get on the ground and get crap on it.
Right.
So now just start wiping that down.
Back and forth.
Straight. Nice.
Oh man, you can, I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but just one wipe across it and you can just see a real difference in the paint. I can still see some of the scratches that are in there. My paint's old and pretty beat up, but man, you can just see the difference in the paint. The gloss of it is just coming back. That's sweet. And Tim, there's something about it seems like there's a built-in delayed kind of function here, so you don't need to feather the throttle as much with this tool. Is that what I'm seeing? Yeah, no, the Meguiar's MT300 does a great job. It really helps you get through the car quicker, but it's got some nice features in there that are really helpful. There's a way to lock the trigger, so if you're doing a lot, you can lock the trigger with a little safety mechanism and it'll keep going. Yeah. I don't recommend that right now, not until you get a little bit more comfortable with it. Okay, so where I told you to tape up and where we couldn't get really good with the orbital, there's an easy little way to get that. You're gonna take your microfiber towel, put the same compound we used on the cutting disc. Now, this works exactly the same as the disc, only this is just a little slower. But because we have a smaller area, it's not a big deal. So just put a tiny bit on the edge of the towel there, and I'm just working it in with my finger. And I'm just kind of just working that area, agitating the stuff off. I can also get deep in here. Again, it's not going to be as efficient, so I'm going to have to go back and forth. Sometimes I'll have to put a little bit more product on. Just really work this area, and this is going to bring this up to a shine as well. Because all those years of people's fingernails touching the paint and scraping it, as well as just grit and road dirt, and up here in Seattle we get all kinds of junk in the wintertime when we're driving our cars. And this car does get driven in the winters.
Right now we're just trying to get the whole car to kind of a consistent level. So I may think at this point it's safe to move on, and why don't you hit the rest of the door?
Okay.
So in the process of going over the car with just the polish compound, we found a few spots where we weren't able to get the scratches and the defects out. So there's a couple spots here and here. And so what we're going to do is we're first going to we're going to switch to the Meguiar's compound, which is a little bit heavier duty, a little bit more aggressive. When we talked earlier about kind of starting low and working our way up, this is starting to get a little bit more aggressive. And we're also going to switch our pad to a cutting disc. And this is a microfiber cutting disc. So these actually, these little fibers, these hairs, will actually go through and do a better job of cutting than this foam will. So the foam is only kind of working the product. So now we have the product plus the cutting disc, and we'll see if that can get us the results we want. So just like before, I need to prime this. So let me steal this towel for just a second. And I just want to really work it in there, sop it in there, get that product all up inside the inside there, and then I'm gonna put a little bit more. And I want to be really careful. I don't want to go too much, because where we do this, we might end up needing to repolish. But this at least will give us an idea if we're able to get these scratches out or not. So I'm just going to tap it down a couple places. The other thing is when you switch to a cutting disc, you'll notice that it doesn't have the foam pad. So I have to be a little bit more careful about how
edges and stuff.
Exactly. That's why I went ahead and taped it up. So I'm going to turn this down a little bit. Okay, holding it firm. I'm just going to go to work and see what happens. Okay. So now I'm going to take my compound off. Now, it's possible that this might have put a few more scratches in because it's a little heavier duty. But anything we put in, we know we can take out with the polishing compound. So I just pulled off the cutting disc and I put back on my pad, and I'm going to go back to the polish and redo the area that I just hit, just to try to knock out any scratches that the compound might have put in. So again, I'm going to throw the cord over my shoulder just to be safe. I'm going to tap this on a few spots. Okay, going to crank it up to about 4,000 RPMs. Get it spread in there. And now I'm going to go to work.
Alright, so we've been working up a sweat here in Tim's garage, hitting my car with polish and some compound to really bring up the paint, knock down some of the scratches, and really remove all the oxidation. That Guards Red paint on the Porsche just pops like it never has before. There's definitely more work we could do. As anything, you can always go to the next step. If we were going to go to the next step, we'd probably go with some heavier compound and maybe a heavier cutting disc and really knock down the scratches entirely and give it a whole buff out. That's kind of the next step. But what we're going to do next is we are going to hit it with sealant, and then we're going to go with wax, and she's going to be that 3-foot car that I was talking about.